Hello, fellow classmates and Athena. Um, it is a privilege to be given an opportunity and space made to share my thoughts on the learning and unlearning that was created and facilitated by this course. The theme I want to talk about is how decolonization is not a metaphor. The more and more I learn about the things I thought I knew for sure, my mind keeps getting challenged. As an example, the way I thought about equity was like this picture here. This picture made perfect sense to me, and it was something took upon to share with others who may have mistaken equality versus equity. However, it has become very clear how this concept of equity, and even this picture, which I believed with my whole heart and brain is so good, is actually a perpetuation of systemic racism, the standards of whiteness, upholding the systems of white supremacy and colonization. These powers, these shackles, these narratives are so ingrained and pervasive throughout society that even a Korean Canadian lesbian woman could not recognize it right in front of my face. As a summary, if you look at the picture, the shortest boy is positioned as the problem. He needs multiple boxes to see over the fence, which is saying he is less than others. He is not whole, not normal, especially compared to the tall guy, and he is seen as he needs more help and is needy. This plays into those oppressive narratives about BIPOC communities, that BIPOC communities are less and thus they need more and take so much public resources. It is automatically assumed and feeding into the narrative and white savior organizations that center equity into their frameworks. What the picture should actually look like is that all three people are the same size. The ground beneath them slopes, and the surroundings of this picture is what makes the playing field not even, not the person itself. So they need a box because of systems or intergenerational trauma, not because they are short or less. We have been blaming people for being short when in reality the ground wasn't even, not them. Some weren't even allowed to stand on the ground. So by policy, practice, prejudice, or bias, the ground is different. But these people are told to be grateful that they get to be at least near the game at all. So shut up. Here's a box for reconciliation, and another one for diversity training, and the third one, because then you might actually be at equal level. So this brings me to the concept of decolonization. When we think about decolonization, we think about reconciliation. We think about educating on what really happened in history to our schools. We think about retributions. We think about diversity training and so on. Like the equity thing I was talking about. I was promoting and loving these decolonizing and progressive programs and advocating for them. But if you think about it a little harder and closer, reconciliation is about rescuing settler normalcy, about rescuing a settler future. And diversity training is still focused on educating white folks and centering whiteness. We keep hearing decolonize our schools or use decolonizing methods. These statements have turned decolonization into a metaphor. Because settler colonialism is built upon an entangled triad structure of settler, native, slave, the decolonial desires of white, non-white, immigrant, post-colonial, and oppressed people can similarly be entangled in resettlement, reoccupation, and reinhabitation that actually further settler colonialism. The metaphorization of decolonization makes possible a set of evasions or settler moves to innocence that problematically attempt to reconcile settler guilt and complicity and rescue settler futurity. To fully see Indigenous perspectives, truly anti-racist decolonization would be to relinquish settler futurity, abandoning the hope that settlers may one day be commensurable to Native peoples. It means removing the asterisks, periods, commas, the whereas, but, and conditional clauses that punctuate decolonization and underwrite settler innocence. Indigenous futures can be heard and thrive again once we actually rewrite the whole system. I'll read a poem by Craig Santos Perez, a Chamorro scholar and poet who I think depicts this very idea with great brevity. When you take away the punctuation, he says of Lines lifted from the documents about military occupied land, its acreage and location. You take away its finality, opening the possibility of other futures. So now that I've fully accepted the fact that my thoughts, my ideas, my opinions, and even the things I valued have been influenced by colonization, I'm committed to listening, learning, unlearning, and shifting paradigms. As Dr. D'Angelo, author of White Fragility, states, those of us raised in Western society are conditioned into a white supremacist worldview because it is the bedrock of our society and its institutions. Regardless of whether a parent told you that everyone was equal, or the poster in the hall of your white suburban school proclaimed the value of diversity, or you have traveled abroad, or you have people of color in your workplace or family, the socializing power of white supremacy cannot be avoided. The message circulates 24/7 and have little or nothing to do with intentions, awareness, or agreement. So it almost feels like the work we wish to see around us needs to be within us first. The more issues I see in the news, the erosion of critical thinking, the over-reliance on technology, and just our pure consumption and consumerism habits killing our planet, I'm pushed more and more to finally realize that we need to learn from indigenous wisdom and worldviews to save ourselves before we combust. We don't have elders and knowledge keepers that want to pass their stories and wisdom down to us. We have Botox and pharmaceutical companies making us scared to age, making us concerned with Instagram filters and how many boats we're going to own. I'll leave you guys with my final confession. I've always thought of myself as someone that has good intentions, always wanting to fight for the underdog and confident to be able to articulate ideas and mobilize people. So I've always said when people ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my answer was always, I want to be a voice for the voiceless. I want to help people. But the more I listen, unlearn, and learn, I realize that no one is actually voiceless, and that was not a responsible way for me to think. How I should have thought about it is that I need to stop talking and pass the mic. As well-intentioned or not, I've been talking over these voices and complicit in supremacy behavior that I should be the voice for the voiceless. It's just the audacity in that idea in itself is just so supremacist. So with that, thank you for listening to a snippet of my musings on this. I look forward to your thoughts.